Happy Saturday, loves! If this is your first time checking out my Facebook Live, thank you so much for checking it out. My name is Dani. I'm a virtual licensed psychotherapist and happiness transformation coach. And I typically work with people who are feeling unhappy, unfulfilled, overwhelmed, stressed out, anxious, maybe a little depressed. So this month's theme of Facebook Live had to do with connection. So 2 weeks ago, I did a Facebook Live on World Kindness Day, which had to do with how we can be kind to other people and how we can be kind to ourselves. And then this past week, I did a Facebook Live on Entrepreneurs Day, and that had to do with emotional issues that tend to pop up out of nowhere unexpectedly as an entrepreneur. And today's Facebook Live is World Hello Day, which recognizes the role that communication plays for preserving peace. So I wanted to talk about different ways to effectively communicate in order to create peace. One way I noticed when there's a conflict that arises is to determine if you're going to talk now, discuss things now, or if you're going to talk about things later. When I've worked with couples in the past, that tends to be something that drives arguments because usually one person in that relationship wants to talk about things immediately and the other person typically wants to talk about things later on. So that can create conflict. So during a time when there is no conflict, let's determine, do we want to talk about, if a conflict should arise, do we want to talk about it now or do we want to talk about it later? And if we do want to talk about things later, what does later look like? Does later look like maybe 30 minutes from now or an hour from now? Using I statements. So what using I statements looks like, it looks like taking accountability for ownership of how I'm feeling based on the story I'm creating and perceiving on the situation or the event that's going on around me. So I want to give you some examples of I statements. Say, for example, you're in a situation and it's, you can't keep coming home so late, it's inconsiderate. One version or a way you can communicate that with an I statement is, I feel worried when you come home late. I can't even sleep. Another example is, you never call me. I guess we just won't talk anymore. So one way to effectively communicate that instead is, I feel hurt when you go so long without calling. I'm afraid you don't care. So if you notice, these examples take ownership. I am feeling or experiencing such and such when I notice this and this and this. Because there's always different perceptions and perspectives to situations, right? So the next one, clearly stating your needs and your wants. It can get really confusing sometimes if you're communicating and you don't even really know exactly what you need or want. So get familiar with what it is that you need or want, and then being able to communicate that. Listening to others without interrupting. Saying yes when you mean no. That is something that's really common for people. We'll tend to overcommit or we'll tend to agree to things out of pleasing other people. So be mindful. When you really want to say no, are you saying no or are you saying yes? And it works the other way around too. Do you notice yourself saying no when you really need to say yes? Notice if you're taking responsibility. So that is one of probably the biggest things when it comes to effectively communicating. Rather than putting it on the other person or blaming the other person, things work better when we take ownership because everyone has a different perspective of the situation. So some examples of assertive communication. I've been feeling frustrated about doing most of the chores around the house. I understand that you're busy, but I need help. How can we make this work? So if you notice here, the speaker takes responsibility for their feelings without blaming the other person and describing their needs. Another example is, I won't be able to take you to the airport on Friday. I've had a long week and I want to rest. Here, the speaker respects their own needs by clearly saying no, rather than agreeing to something when they really want to say no, agreeing to it, and then being resentful afterwards because now they've agreed to something they didn't really mean to or want to agree to. So if anything resonates with you here or you feel inclined to share this video, I always encourage people to please share this information if you found this helpful. And if anything came up for you and you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact me. My email is Dani, that's D-A-N-I, at DaniLaberry.com. Again, thank you so much for checking out my Facebook Live video. Take care of yourself and have a great rest of your Saturday. And I'll see you next month for the next Facebook Live. Take care.